نحمده ونصلي على رسوله
Class
الكريم.
4, session 4.
We express our praise and gratitude to Allah Ta'ala, seek blessings on the Prophet, peace be upon him. Surah 2, Ayah 147, 148. Everybody have something to look at? Phone or something? Or you have it all memorized? Yeah, it's like he had the Hafiz quality. It's like Hafiz stuff.
Maybe you can recite for us.
Yeah. So, again, to recap where we are, we're essentially in the middle of this section, which goes from Ayah 124 to Ayah 163. And ultimately, it's basically the story of Makkah through Ibrahim alayhi salam and family, the Prophet, peace be upon him, the Qibla, as well as the struggle of all of them. And we are now speaking about the actual shifting of the Qibla. We talked about that last time, right? Like, it was like mid-prayer, and how different is it if it would have been before the prayer as opposed to mid-prayer and such. And so the concern that many people had was, okay, well, what happens to our previous prayers if the Qibla was supposed to be Makkah? And the answer to that was that, okay, we're not losing anything. And then another concern was, okay, for lack of a better term, the disrespectful language some people were using was along the lines of, can't Allah make up his mind? First you're praying one way, now you're praying the other way. But the key is that Ayah 146, that the people who received the scripture before, الَّذِينَ آتَيْنَاهُمُ الْكِتَابَ يَعْرِفُونَهُ كَمَا يَعْرِفُونَ أَبْنَاءَهُم, that they recognize him, meaning the Prophet, peace be upon him, or they recognize the Quran as well as they recognize their own sons. Meaning, this wasn't like the case where you have religion today, where it's hard to really figure out which is truth, right? At least from a cursory study, right? Because all the different religions have their appealing qualities. We're saying at the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him, Medina, it was so clear to them that he's the Prophet, that the Quran is the truth, that it was as clear as them recognizing their own sons. And really take that to its full conclusion. For example, if you're on Hajj and you lose your kid, and your kid has wandered off, and you're seeing all these kids who look like your kid, and you glance at them, no, that's not my son, no, that's not my son. Then when you see your son, bam, in 3 million people you recognize your son as soon as you see him. That's how clear it was to them. But what does it say? وَإِنَّ فَرِيقًا مِّنْهُمْ, but, or indeed, some of them, لَيَكْتُمُونَ الْحَقِّ, they seek or they hide the truth, وَهُمْ يَعْلَمُونَ, knowingly. So many of the people who recognize the prophethood of Muhammad, peace be upon him, knowingly hid it. Okay. Which is a very frightening thing, but it's also a very human thing. It's very frightening because they're essentially hiding salvation from people. This is the truth. This is the absolutely clear truth. What else are they hiding? They're hiding a better way of life in dunya. This is the way. This is the way to follow. You're going to have a better life from everyone, for the sake of their petty status. But that is a very, very human thing. Just like there's a common narration you'll find in poetry and old books, is that a king will try to take care of all his subjects in his land, but if he has a toothache, he's not going to care about anybody except for his tooth. Right? And that's human nature. That's one of the strange things about human nature in us. That if I have a really bad toothache, it's very easy for me to forget about all the people that I'm supposed to be taking care of. And I'm just concerned about this, and it's very painful too. And so we're told, Al-haqqu min rabbika, so the truth is from your Rabb. The haqq is from your Rabb, so from your nourisher. فَلَا تَكُونَنَّ مِنَ الْمُمْتَرِينَ, don't be those who waver, don't be among those who waver. Okay. So, one of the themes you're going to see more and more is this sense that, all right, this is the truth, you should not be in a position where you're wondering if this is the truth. That issue is already addressed way back in Ayah 23. That if you have doubts about this, bring a surah like this. So, in theory, what's taking place here is that you should be in a position by now where you're really solid in your faith. If you're not solid in your faith, then it's like you have to backtrack to ayahs, 120 ayahs ago. And then about each of us, 148. وَلِكُلٍّ وِجْهَةٌ وَمَوَلِّيهَا. So for every face, there is, how does this translate? A direction which is faces. And for every way is essentially a direction. Now we spoke about the face before, right, didn't we? That turn your face towards submission to Allah. And what's the point of the face? That your face is kind of dictating where your focus is, right? Try as an experiment to walk, forward, but with your face looking sideways, and see how long you can go before you start falling over something, right? So your face is the thing that's directing you. Okay. But then we also had the ayah. Have we reached it yet? Okay, I don't think I think we've actually reached it. Basically, who is worse than someone who prevents people from the masjid?
Yeah.
Yeah. We did have that ayah, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
114, I believe.
MashaAllah. Okay. And so the response to that was essentially that, okay, east and west all belong to Allah. Wherever you turn, you will find Allah's face. And we read that two ways. One way is wherever it is, the whole world is a masjid. So wherever you're seeking Allah, you're going to see His face. Meaning what? You're going to see His face welcoming you. As well as, if you're one of the people who's blocking people from the masjid, wherever you turn, you're going to see Allah Ta'ala watching you. That you cannot escape Allah Ta'ala. So that I just want to draw our attention to the usage of the term face. But how is this understood? Every one of us has a destiny. Okay. And included in that, by destiny, I'm not talking about so much about free will, I'm talking about more of our skills. Okay. That each and every one of us in this room, there are some things that we're better at, some things that we're not as good at. So like, for example, if I asked you, which one's easier, praying or fasting? Some of you are going to say fasting is easier. Some of you are going to say prayer is easier. Some of you are going to say they're both easy, and some are going to say no, they're both hard, right? But the point is that each of us has been designed with our particulars. So we have another command after that. فَاسْتَبِقُوا الْخَيْرَاتِ فَاسْتَبِقُوا الْخَيْرَاتِ. So the literal translation is seek to be the first in doing good. Yeah. And your translation should say something like race against each other in doing good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Seek to be the first in doing good. So what do you think about this? This is saying compete in doing good. I-148. What do you think about that? Competition in religiousness, in religious practice.
Interesting.
Your thoughts? Ifat, what do you think about
Yeah,
that?
I know. We've had that. It's like we're waiting for that, right?
It's like, let's just cut to the chase.
I think that as long as it's okay, so my thoughts have evolved since last time because I've been listening, right? So
Mashallah.
Transformative.
Yeah, I
I've been
pray.
making the law for guidance.
Yeah.
Please pray for me.
Yeah.
So I think that it's healthy because we're doing it in every other aspect of life.
Okay.
We're trying to achieve. And that doesn't necessarily mean that we're being cutthroat,
Okay.
but the idea is that we want to achieve this because it is what our goal is.
Okay.
So we should be competing
Okay.
with ourselves and with
Wow.
each other, I guess.
That's like the opposite of before.
Mm.
Mashallah. Wow.
You know.
Okay. Any other thoughts? What do you think about this competition in piety? Yeah, Imani.
Well, I have two friends who did hifs and memorized Quran, so they used each other as competition to try to memorize more. I think if you're working towards a good goal.
And it was like a healthy competition. It wasn't like one person was stealing
Yeah,
pages.
no, they're friends, and they decided to do it together.
But I wanted to bring something.
Wouldn't that be suck like if like you stole a page and someone thought that they're Hafiz? Like, no, you're not. You didn't memorize page 346.
Last page. That's
I
one
got it
monster.
again.
But you know what's interesting about it is that sometimes when you're doing something, like say you have a goal, and then you achieve at a certain level, and then you're thinking, man, I'm doing so good, you know?
Yeah.
And then you turn around and like you see somebody doing like twice as much as you,
Totally.
and then it opens your eyes to the ability to do that, and then it's possible within the confines of whatever your situation is, you know?
This
So I
is.
think that is what's beneficial in it.
I think that's really, really important because a lot of times when you're hearing khutbahs and speeches and stuff, you're going to hear about like the amazing feats of people, right? And then you just hear what is like impossible. But you have to look at those things as what a person's capable of doing. So who is it? I think it's the grandson of Imam Hassan, who he used to, He used to do 1,000 rakats a day, 1,000. He used to feed 150 people every night. And then how did they find out about all the people he was feeding? Because after he died, all these people who were saying, there's somebody who used to feed us, and we know who he is, and they figure out it was him. So imagine that, right? That's what one person can do. Imagine how much time it would take to do 100 rakats a day. He's doing 1,000. Yeah. So the point is, look at that as to see what a person is capable of doing, as opposed to, wow, that's so pious and I'm so horrible. You know, that's a lot of times how we read these things. So yeah, that's the point of reading, or that's a major point of reading all these stories of all these great figures over the course of history, to see what a person's capable of doing, to open that. And absolutely, competing, doing good, yeah.
Within the overall sub category of tribalism.
Yeah.
So I mean, is this kind of talking about shifting from competition for tribalistic prestige?
As
Is it
opposed
trying to shift that energy
to
to
salvation?
right, competing for good versus this urge for tribalistic prestige? I mean, is that consciously what would you say?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. Because even when we're saying, like one of the first mentions we had of tribalism, we spoke about hasad, right? That very, very vicious envy, where you don't just want to win, you want the other side to be destroyed. When you're competing with good, it also means you're following rules, because if you're breaking rules, then you're not competing good anymore, right? So built into competing with good is you're also trying to help the other person go up too. Yes?
Okay, so obviously there's like a history within our tradition of competing with like for good works, you know, with Omer Mozaffar and Abu Bakr, but like doesn't that kind of change your intention though? Like I feel like if you're just like, oh, I want to do better, like obviously like you'll still be rewarded because like inshallah because you're doing a good deed or whatever, but isn't it like you should be doing it for the little Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala?
So, I'm guessing it's probably fair to say that in Omar's case, he's probably still doing it. The primary intention is still out of the love of Allah Ta'ala, right? But the person to beat the benchmark is Abu Bakr, right? And so, I think not only is he saying that I'm going to beat Abu Bakr, I'm going to be the best. Right now, Abu Bakr is the best, right? So I don't think the two are necessarily a contradiction. It can turn into me focused on beating him as opposed to serving Allah Ta'ala. But I'm guessing the example of Omar is illustrating that we can probably fairly assume, you know, he's doing it out of the love of Allah Ta'ala. Yeah. Yes, ma'am, or whoever's next to you.
So I just had two things with what Omar was saying, and I think the last time that this came up with the competition, it ended also with wherever you are, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bring you all together.
Yep.
So like that good works and like that shift from like tribalism to like you're competing but you're competing kind of as a team, like in doing good, and I think that's beautiful. That it's like it kind of keeps that in perspective. And then this is just a question I had. Someone one day, Sunday school, something had told me this like hadith or story about how Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu once asked the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, oh, like, do you know if like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with me? And then like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked something like, oh, actually Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala like said, Naudullah, astaghfirullah, Allah forgive me if I say something wrong, but I think it was something along the lines of ask Abu Bakr if he is pleased with me. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is asking the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to, but I like obviously don't know, and Naudullah if I said anything wrong, but have you ever heard of something like that?
Just means something,
No?
yeah.
Okay. Alright. Erase it, everybody, from your memories.
It could be comic, you know,
Okay.
it doesn't ring a bell.
Okay.
Yeah, if it,
I was just saying comment, or in response to your comment, I feel that, you know, if you are striving for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, somewhere in your consciousness there has to be this idea where a lot of what you do is in your heart and in private, you know? So that competition doesn't have to be this public competition.
Correct,
You know what I'm saying? So in that way, no one really knows what you're doing in your day, you know? So if you see someone doing something and it inspires you to say, I want to be that close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, your intention is clean.
yeah, seems like it. Okay, so this is another command.
Do you know which command this is?
Yeah.
Yeah,
How many are there?
yeah,
I know how
exactly.
many there are.
Yeah.
I look for two.
Yeah.
but I don't remember how many.
I'll let you know like on the 19th of May, you know, which number this is. Yeah. Yeah.
It's 8.
I didn't get to that question yet, okay.
It's the eighth command.
Yeah, it
Just
is.
looking at my notes here.
It is the 8th command.
Yeah.
I
What's
said
that?
8. Didn't I say 8?
I think it is.
Ah,
You said 9.
I was close.
We do VR.
Okay, without looking, what's number 7?
I don't know.
Zakat.
That's right.
Number 6, easy.
Oh, that was 8.
Salah.
Salat. Yeah. Good.
Salah zakat.
Okay, so this is number 8. So wherever you are, Allah Ta'ala will bring you together. Okay. And then your translations will say for judgment. It is not exclusively for judgment, but the basic idea being that your competition, if it is for good, it will not split you apart. Right? If your competition is truly for good. If your competition is driven by rivalry, then it will split you apart. Inna Allah ala kulli shayin qadir, and Allah Ta'ala is able to do all things. So, you're going to see a number of ayahs, speaking of facing the Qibla. 149. وَمِنْ حَيْثُ خَرَجْتَ. So wherever you are, wherever you go out to, then فَوَلِّي وَجْهَكَ شَطْرَ الْمَسْجِدِ الْحَرَامِ. So turn your face towards Masjid al-Haram. Okay, now I want to make a side point here. If I just read this ayah, what does it seem to be telling me to do?
Just saying go to, right?
It seems like it's saying that I always have to be facing northeast in Chicago.
Right.
No matter what, I can't turn my face away from northeast. This is related to what Dr. Jackson talked about in class today. The idea being that, okay, sometimes when you have an instruction, it's do this. Other times it's a good thing to do. Other times it's a can. So he broke it down to 3 things. It's must do this, should do this, can do this. Okay, that's one way to look at it. Another is, going back to the point that we should always assume that there's blank lines in every single ayah, right? The blank lines are almost always filled by other parts of the Quran, or by the teachings of the Prophet, or just by using your understanding. So here the literal text is, whenever you go out, wherever you go out, turn your face towards essentially the Haram. But we understand, obviously, it means when you're praying.
But metaphorically, it means keep Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your mind.
Very nice. Yeah, absolutely. Good. That's not like yeah, absolutely. So the point being that if you look at it from a whole spiritual consciousness perspective, then absolutely. What's the role of the masjid in a community? Or what are the roles of the masjid in a community?
Fill up the roads.
Talk
So,
about
together.
yeah.
I mean, that's what the goal, the role is of the people who run the masjid, right?
To have a sense of
But the masjid itself, sorry?
Is it to bring people together, to have like a congregation, to have
Okay.
congregation amongst people, right?
Yeah.
To have a safe, clean place to pray.
Okay, so all these things. Think of it as the heart of the community. Okay? By heart, I don't mean socially speaking. It is not necessarily the place where social things happen, but it is the heart of the community. And what I mean by this is that if you look at your community's masjid, any community's masjid, it will tell you all about what the nature of the community is, right? Look at their Jummah, look at their Fajr, look at all the different prayers, and you will have a very strong sense of the nature of the deen in the community. Good. Jummah, when do people show up? How do they conduct themselves during the khutbah? What is the khutbah about? That'll tell you a lot about the community. What is the space like for men? What is the space like for women? How clean is the space? How clean are the bathrooms? Right? So for example, if the bathrooms are nasty, which is the case in almost every single masjid that I've ever been to in America, right?
Sloppy wudu or
Yeah, I think that if that was the only problem, yeah. But what is that telling you? If the masjid is messy, what is it saying? It's saying people in the community are not coming forward to maintain it. Okay.
You know what else? Empty shoe rack, shoes all.
Yeah, exactly. Another example, right? So that's telling you about the condition of the people, yeah, as indicators as opposed to good or bad, right? And then the haram tells you the condition of the Ummah. Right? Like Hajj will tell you, give you a good sense of the condition of the Ummah as you watch what's going on. You guys get that feeling like you're getting a taste
So,
of the Ummah?
it's like
What do you
amazing.
think?
It's like
Wahi
constantly
and
clean.
Sufi Saf, yeah.
But then I don't know how it is in Hajj because I haven't done
The positive and the negative.
Yeah, I'm saying everything, positive and negative, yeah. I mean, even the fact that a community has a masjid is automatically by definition a positive. I think I might have given the example that I went to Lexington, Kentucky. This is 15 years ago, so I'm assuming everything's changed now. Lexington, back then, had 2 masjids. And Lexington's an interesting place. It's a college town, but it's like a Naperville, right? So, like, young, new money, that type of thing. And so they had 2 masjids. One masjid, the first one we went to, looked like a beat-up shed. Yeah. And nobody was around. There were these 2 guys hanging out, and so we started cleaning it up, even though, in theory, the local people should have been cleaning up. The vacuum cleaner we found looked like it was from the 1950s. It looked like it would probably cost more to throw it away than to actually keep it. Right? Barely worked. Okay? Carpet was like this nasty dark gray office carpet type thing. All the walls just basic white paint. Kitchen was nasty. Everything's nasty, right? And so just we cleaned it up as well as we can. And then the event started, and every single car in the parking lot was an Acura, Mercedes, Lexus, and everything. Yeah. Totally.
They come in, they're like, why did you ruin our lunch?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Just how we wanted it.
Something strange here. You know? And during the session, you know, while the speaker's speaking, kids are running around yelling, screaming, and you know, people are talking and everything, right? Other side of Lexington, in the poor part of Lexington, we walked to this beat up house, yeah, and as soon as we walk inside, immaculate, spotlessly clean kitchen. And then we walked into the actual, like, the prayer hall, and it was like someone's living room completely taken care of, right? 2 opposite sides. And the interesting thing is, many of the people who are part of the community of the other masjid hate those people, so they would come to this one to be with these people. The point is that you look at the condition of a masjid, look at the condition of the people at prayer time, especially in Jummah, you will learn a lot, good and bad, about the community. Yeah.
It really starts at a young age. I remember, I'll share this briefly, when I visited Tetleaf out in Fremont, California.
This was a young age.
Big event, you know. Well, they had this packed, crowded event, right? And there's a bunch of kids too, and they're 4, 5, 6 years old. And they were kind of walking around but not being disruptive, and they were all super quiet.
Wow.
And they had people bringing out tea in these little cups. People would take the tea, set it down, and I'm like, my mind is disaster waiting to happen, right? There's kids running around. There were cups of tea, and these kids were walking, not one cup was spilled.
Wow.
They were just walking around, and they'd see an empty one, they'd pick it up, bring 5, 6-year-olds, just with good, like, adab, and careful not to make a mess. I was very
And then Omer was like, no, this is not right.
It's like, I was like, oh, he did it, kid. What do you
Control your kids.
Right? What is wrong with you? Right?
Yeah.
But
Wow.
Yeah, I probably shouldn't have mentioned that was Lexington, but it's too late now. But, yeah.
We in Ohio.
Lexington, Canada. Yes.
Sorry?
Kentucky doesn't have a good reputation at all.
Ohio, yeah. So the point being that the masjid in a community is essentially the heart of the community. Just like the heart in a person is the heart of that person. If the heart is corrupt, the whole person is corrupt. If the heart is sound, the whole person is sound. And the haram is the heart of the ummah.
That's kind of scary because in terms of what we talked about last time with like the Gucci and the
Yeah.
and the little little Kaaba compared to all this stuff around.
Yeah, and waiting for like the kiss for the Kaaba would have like a little Nike logo on it, or like your ihram to have,
Coach. That's
Tommy Hilfiger. Yeah.
Yeah. Why not, right?
Yeah.
Like that's another thing because I was thinking about this when we were talking last time about what is the role of the masjid, and there's this article about like how from 1950 to now how different the Kaaba has become, and it was saying that like all these houses and everything have been destroyed, like and graves have been moved because like we don't want to create or the Saudi government, Wahhabi Islam does not want to create like false idols.
Yeah.
But they've put in like Gucci and
exactly.
Louis Vuitton and like how are these not false idols? So I was just thinking about that in terms of like creating identity. Like, I think that is like a very like essential part of like of ibadah, because not more than like praying or anything like that, but I was just thinking because no matter what, like you leave an empty space and something will grow. And like I think that's what's, you know, proved itself. You know, we took down like the Sahabis' houses and like put in like capitalist things.
They're moving mountains there.
Yeah.
I mean, taking down mountains. You know, like it's scary.
Yeah.
And what
Like
does
changing the
what do you think that says
landscape.
about the condition of the ummah, if that's what the haram looks like?
What do you guys think? What is that saying?
End of days. I mean.
And you said that with like,
I mean,
you know,
that-
Well, you know, that's
What else can you
at the end of days, we win, right?
Like,
Yeah.
You know, that being said, I mean, yeah, there was like issues. I remember being when we were the Hajj there was like things that were annoying to me that I saw, but I felt like the overwhelming, you know, maybe there was that stuff around us, but the people that were there were just so, you know, welcoming. Like the people around me were so welcoming and so helpful and kind of together, you know. And that's something that I noticed, even though we had all this around us, that was something that was more overwhelming to me, you know.
One of the lectures on Mufti Kamani, which was very interesting, where he was talking about when they were erecting the Masjid al-Nabi. He said that the original structure of Masjid al-Nabi was a very basic one, where the roof of it was just basically palm tree leaves and so on. And so when it used to rain, the rain would actually fall inside the masjid. But he said his teacher said that the Masjid al-Nabi of before, the structure was very kacha, but the people inside were very pakka. Yeah, and then he said now we have
Kacha meaning
a very
like
pakka structure.
raw. The
Ripe,
people inside were
unripe.
very
Solid.
solid.
Yeah.
Now we have a very solid structure, but very weak. And,
Oh,
you know,
deep,
inside.
yeah. Totally.
But, I mean, just so that we don't all leave on a negative note, because I mean, even Medina in particular is such, you know, it's still, Makkah has its own, I think Makkah is there's all, just when you're doing your ibadah there's a sense of a test to it, and so if you want to take it from there, yes, you know, good people are coming together, you're in a state of, the Ummah is under a state of trial. I think
totally.
that's part of it. At the same time, in Makkah, and then at the same time, I remember one of my memories is striking up a conversation with somebody from Malaysia in whatever broken Arabic we could come up with, because neither he couldn't understand any English, and I certainly couldn't understand any Malay. But you know, even things like, so you have moments like that in Medina. There's a lot of peace and security there, and that's also one of our masajid and one of the states of our own.
One of the harams.
In spite of everything that, you know, all the commercialism around it, that the heart of the Muslim Ummah is still very, you know, very gravitated towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's, I don't want
I think it's
to
completely
lose
fair.
sight of that either.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have
So,
a question about like Makkah in general. Like,
yeah.
why is it that I don't know? Why is it that non-Muslims can't enter? We were talking about it in school, and I couldn't remember why.
It's Allah says so.
Allah
I think
Surah Tawbah.
I think it's cool. I mean, not cool, but I think it's good that they're not allowed, just because I feel like then it would become really tourist.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like,
There's only one
I
purpose
feel
for why you're
like-
going.
Exactly, and I feel like they would come for tourism, and I feel like that, I don't know, I think it would, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting how many people get offended by that, right? Why can't non-Muslims go? Because you're not allowed to, you know. Why can't women go into a men's room? Because you're not allowed to. Like, you know, why can't you go in my house? Because you're not allowed to. You know. So this is the basic point that it's in Surah Tawbah, but I forgot what ayat it is.
Oh no, that's fine. I just
Yeah.
couldn't remember the reason. It wasn't after like the conquest of Makkah or anything, right? Or was it? I thought it was that.
I think it would have to be after the conquest of Makkah. Yeah.
And like the Prophet ﷺ said it, or no? It was like,
Well, it's Surah Tawbah. So Surah Tawbah is one of the very last surahs anyway. So.
oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because Surah Tawbah begins by saying, all right, you got 4 months to decide what you're going to do. Either you're going to become Muslim or you have to leave. Or,
Wait, how do they, like, catch that, though?
sorry?
Like, how do they catch that people aren't Muslim?
Well, if we think back then, Mecca itself is a very, very tiny place, right? To put in perspective, my high school student population was about the size of Mecca. Right? And so everybody knows everybody else. The real focus even then would be on the leaders of Mecca anyway, right, as opposed to the lay people. That's who they were really concerned with. And there, I think it'd be obvious who is, who isn't.
Well, like now it would be hard
Who's-
to
who's- sorry?
But now it would be hard to
Yeah, it's, I mean, there's that famous guy, Richard Burton.
Yeah, like who pretended to be Muslim
Yeah.
just to go in and
Yeah. And, you know, part of it is that, okay, it's this exotic place. I pretended to be Muslim. I grew a beard and I fooled everybody, right? You know.
No,
Like,
I
okay,
have
but
that
at the same
second.
time, I
Yeah, I
feel
know,
like if
I
you're
know.
really gonna try that hard to get in, you should be allowed to be in.
Well, it's like an extreme sport, you know. It's like, let's see if we can get in.
How could he go and not become Muslim though? That one's baffled.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Maybe he did. Dun, dun, dun.
If you want his story, it's really hard getting, so I didn't tell you.
yeah. I mean, it's possible, and I mean that's what you really wonder about when you see Islamic studies professors who are not Muslim, and you got to wonder what's going on in their hearts, you know. Or take it all the way back to the kafirs of Mecca, you know. Those who remained kafirs all the way till the end. They got the Prophet, peace be upon him. They got the Quran. They got everything.
Do you think Esposito's Muslim?
I was just thinking that. John Esposito.
I don't, if he's chosen to be silent, we should remain silent.
No, he says he's Catholic, but
Oh, he says he's Catholic.
he says he's Catholic, but he like, who knows?
Well, here, let me redefine it. There are a number of Islamic studies professors, experts type things, who will give a different definition of Muslim, right? So our definition of Muslim is Shahada, and you can't be, you know, Jewish or Christian. But there are definitely some like meaning that I know personally, like Islamic studies professors who are like Episcopalian, but they will also say they're Muslim because the definition of Muslim is much wider, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever
I
floats your
remember there
boat.
was one professor we had.
You know, I think then in my mind I'm like, well, it's hard to reconcile Trinity, but yeah, go ahead.
I had one Muslim, I had an Islamic studies professor who we just, like, we never knew, and he would, like, his topic was the Quran, like, that's what I took his class for, and.
Is that Benedictine?
No, Northwestern,
Okay.
and he, like, at season.
Oh yeah, Rudiger.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, so his kids' names are Muslim and everything, and we just,
means nothing.
I never knew what. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, we have William and Mary. There's a Professor John Williams who's very.
Dun, 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 dun. Sorry, Star
No,
Wars.
exactly. That's exactly what you would think. Right? So he would never answer the question, but he fasted, for example,
Yeah.
and even that doesn't necessarily mean anything.
Means nothing.
Yeah.
But he would but everybody knew, you know, and it was kind of interesting because all the American students said, "Don't bother Dr. Williams when he's fasting."
Yeah, in academia you find all kinds of weird people.
Were you guys there at the same time?
Yeah.
People that have.
Sorry?
People that have.
That's
Wait,
Exactly.
you went to William and Mary undergrad?
Oh, no, law school, but.
Oh, you went to there for law school. You know Dr.
Yeah.
Dr. Williams, and of course, there's Dr. Bill, of course.
It's like such a small school.
Exactly.
I think it's a testament to how, like, stigmatized and how difficult it is to change that, like, identity from Christian to Muslim. Like, to have that huge, like, okay, we can't, like, this group has all of these things attached to it, and it's just so difficult to, like, be like, okay, I'm changing.
I know another, I probably mentioned her before, she's an Islamic studies professor, she's not in America anymore, but she got her doctorate here, who said that she believes she can serve more by not telling anybody she's Muslim. Yeah.
Interesting.
So, yeah, Allah knows best. So, I have no idea how we got into that topic, but how did we get into that?
Turning your face towards, I think.
We start talking about the haram.
How do a
Hey,
non-Muslim enter haram?
Oh,
And
yeah.
then, okay, they must be Muslim, and then we have professors who are
Yeah,
non-Muslim.
okay.
That was the greatest
And
topic.
then Neil Armstrong, I heard he was on.
Point of all that, there's weird people in
Actually,
academia.
It was one of those guys who found their own separate rocket, went to the moon, gave the adults to be on.
Yeah, exactly.
And you saw the crack in her.
Yeah, listen to what you just said.
You sound like that in the morning.
Yeah, so you're hearing what you're saying, right? Yeah.
Should I say it again?
Oh, thank you.
I can give you a visual.
Oh my god.
150.
150. ومن حيث خرجت فولي وجهك شطر المسجد الحرام. Exactly the same language. What do you think is the need or the wisdom by mentioning this again and again? So 148, okay, every one of you has a direction. 149, wherever you are, face the haram. 150, wherever you are, face the haram. What do you think? It's making it clear that this is a fundamental change. Right? That this is not a one-time thing, this is a fundamental change in the prayer. Can you think of any other changes in the forms of ibadah? So here, there's a change in the direction. Can you think of anything else?
During the Prophet's life and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be after.
Didn't after Mi'raj, wasn't Salat
So-
then different?
so- Salah before, seems like there's varying opinions. Salah before might have been just sajda. Might have been al-Fatiha. Or it might have been the exact Salah we have now. It seems like there were changes in terms of requirements in the fasting nights. Right. In terms of what was allowed. Which we'll begin talking about 30
the
hours.
what? Fast.
Like, so fasting is the same. I mean, fasting changed from, the nights every month to Ramadan, but in terms of what you were allowed to do in the nights of fasting.
Oh, okay.
It seems that may have changed. That essentially everything that is halal became legal, and that may not have been the case before.
Isn't one example, couldn't that be like praying Tarawih together?
Good
It's a
example.
change.
That's a good example. Yeah, yeah. That would have been after the Prophet's time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's a really good example.
I like the 8 versus 20.
That's an interesting thing. It actually is 20. I mean, it gets down to schools of thought, but it actually is 28. It's Qiyamul Layl, Tahajjud. You know.
That is just sometimes 8, sometimes it's 10.
Because some churches were doing like 8 last year.
Yeah, I mean that's always the case, right? Or 8 is when everybody leaves.
Oh no, they were doing like the same amount but with 8.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
If you
hard.
Bridgeview, what they do sometimes is they'll do like I forgot when at Isha time, and then they'll do another big amount before Fajr.
Oh, I have a question on Tarawih though. So what if you do Tarawih at home with like the little surah signal?
With a little what?
The surah signal.
A little what?
Like the
Surah
surah
that
signal.
you know, a small amount that you
Yeah,
know.
so do it.
That's
Keep
fine.
it
Yeah.
less.
Is it less? Like, is it less?
I wouldn't consider it make it an issue of less or more. Like I'd say if you're doing it, then I'd say that's fantastic. Right. I mean, because if I say it's less, then you're not going to do it.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
But I'm just asking.
And isn't that what the Prophet did? Like, I mean,
At
I
first,
love, yeah,
yeah.
I love, did he pray in congregation ever?
Oh no, okay. I'm just talking about just doing
Yeah,
the same
oh.
surahs over and over. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it sunnah to like say the whole surah or the whole Quran for Tarawih or something?
I used to know the answer, but I don't remember anymore. It's one of those things I only remember when Ramadan's coming in.
Isn't it something to do with, that the Prophet ﷺ used to recite the Quran once
To
during
Jibreel Islam.
Ramadan, so you're satisfying that sunnah while also satisfying the sunnah?
Could be. Yeah, I really don't remember. Meaning, Orland Park Prayer Center over the years has been doing a number of different things. Sometimes they'll do the whole Quran, sometimes they'll do 8, sometimes they'll do 20. And sometimes when they'll do 8, like some places that do 8 will do the same amount of Quran, right? Orland Park Prayer Center, at least one year I remember, they just did 8 and short rakats and everything. They didn't come anywhere close to doing the whole Quran. They just did various passages throughout the whole month, which I thought was very interesting. So, yeah, I don't remember. They asked me like in July, and I don't remember like that. So, Ayah 150. Wherever you go, turn your face towards Masjid al-Haram. And wherever you may be, turn your face in that direction. So this way people will not have any argument against you, إِلَّا الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا مِنْهُمْ, except for those who are zalims. Again, what was the issue? That God changed the direction of prayer. That you would think in some way, some rational way, that if there's one thing that's going to be consistent, it's how you pray to God, right? But the actual consistency is obedience to God, right? Just like another example in terms of rationality versus obedience, when you are washing your feet, which part do you do first? Top or bottom, officially? And suddenly many of you are looking at me like, oh no. Okay. Officially, which part do you do? Top, right? Wouldn't it make sense to do your bottom of your feet first? Right? Why?
Because then you'll get your hands dirty.
Whoa, that's pretty deep, man. Okay. Maybe that's what it is actually. But the point is that yeah, you're supposed to do the top of your foot first, and then the bottom. Yeah. So the point is, I mean, you already killed that argument, but the basic point being that the core issue is still consistently, it's obedience, which is the consistent part. Yeah. So if Allah Ta'ala changes it again, the issue is still, it's the same, it's still
I
obedience.
have a quick thing to ask, and I don't want to sidetrack for too long because it's not totally relevant, but it's relevant. Okay, let me just say it. So,
Yeah, I was going to say, the sidetracking comment is, yeah.
So here's the thing, what is the argument for this statement? So recently, this is what I encountered with somebody, and so the statement was that, you know, I don't like that we were taught to fear, and that's why we should pray. So I want to wait for like that feeling to come, you know, and like now we're like kind of getting older, it doesn't make any sense. So when is that coming up? So I was like, you know, my response to that was, well, do you like wake up and go, I'll just go to work when I feel like it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know there's consequences, so why can your employer have consequences, but your creator can't? But I feel like when your heart is closed, why are you expecting this of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when you don't even expect it from
Yeah, totally.
And I think a better comparison with prayer is like exercising. It's like,
Oh,
like
That's
no
a great
one likes to exercise.
Yeah.
But I mean, like I like praying, but like I mean,
just for the record, and for the recording, I like to pray.
Totally didn't mean that. Totally didn't mean that.
Even though we knew exactly what you meant, we're not gonna
My point is like,
I mean,
those people, I mean,
yeah.
like, when you think about it, this is not a consistent thing, but people are going to go to work because they need to live, you know? So it's that essential, you know? So I don't know what more to say to that. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, it's like you're waiting for a craving, you know? And what if that feeling never comes? Then, you know, have a nice trip to hell. I mean, what are you
I quoted that book too.
I got really
It's called Secret Daughter. It's a really good book.
Secret Daughter?
Secret Daughter.
Okay.
It's actually really good.
It sounds very shady.
And it was like that statement that sometimes our actions proceed what we feel in our heart.
Yeah.
And I truly think that, like, just like exercise, you don't want to do it, and then you do it, and you're like, oh my god, I love this. And you have to do
Oh,
it.
that's what you're.
Well, another one
You still have to
is
take energy to
another thing
That's
is
the thing. And then you must act when you know that it's right.
Yeah.
And
You
then
feel better
your
after,
feelings will,
yeah.
your emotions will follow.
well,
But
if
you know it's right.
how about this comparison? Okay, so like when we think of Allah, the Creator, we think of like in terms of like a parent and a child, right? Like that disparity, like times a million in terms of maturity, right? So like if your 4-year-old says, okay, I just want to eat chocolate, I don't want to eat broccoli meat, you know, until maybe I feel like it, right? So the parent says, no, you have to eat this because it's good for you. But the child has no way to understand why. And like when we accept that we have that relationship with God, then we can maybe see there's wisdom in it that we don't see.
This is the example my dad always uses. Like, he's like, well, if Yusuf wanted to play with a knife, would you let him? You know, he's gonna want to play with it, but he doesn't know any better. That's the same thing with God and us. That's what he was saying.
I think that targets exactly the root of it, which is not like, what do you do? You know, it's your relationship. It's that
Yeah.
connection with Allah. So that exact is a really concrete, you know, visual of you know, redirecting somebody towards their relationship with Allah, because that's what has to come back to before they're going to pray or do anything. When they don't feel like it, they have to start working
It's
on
a
it.
much deeper issue because then it's like, when you think about it, like it has to do with that blind faith of knowing that even though you're in a bad situation, you know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to take care of you, so you find peace in that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says this, you don't really feel like doing it, but you know that He knows better, so you do it. Because you blindly believe, right?
Okay.
I have just one thing to say also about like the earlier.
You're allowed to say two
wherever-
things if you want, but yeah.
Sorry. Just the wherever you are. Sharing.
So, you sure you like prayer, right?
Yes, yes. It was.
She also likes to exercise.
I love exercising. It's the best. No, but I was just saying about the wherever you are turning your face towards the haram, like in terms of like the day of judgment, I think it's kind of also maybe a subtle reminder there that like this is where your life is heading. You know, this is where day of
We're
judgment.
gonna end
That's
up
pretty
there on
deep
the
too,
day.
yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. All right.
That was fake.
What?
That was real.
Okay.
What happened?
So this is command number 9. Face the Qibla. Although you can kind of argue that it's not necessary because we're being told to pray, and that's built into the farther prayer. But there's another command in this ayah. So you pray this way so people don't have any argument against you in terms of your obedience to Allah Ta'ala, except for those who commit wrong. So fear them not, but fear me. Here it is fear, right? Up to this point we've been saying taqwa, 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 mindful of God, mindful of God. Here we're saying fear. فَلَا تَخْشَوْهُمْ وَخْشَوْنِي. So that I may complete my favor upon you, that you may be guided. So yeah, fear is definitely part of our relationship with Allah. But here, how is it being described? If you're going to have fear, don't have fear of people, have fear of Allah Ta'ala. Don't fear them, fear me.
Why would he say that to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? I mean, it's not even a question. No, he's not going to fear.
There, I think he's not fearing the reprimand of people. There, I think the Prophet is fearing losing people.
Oh, I
Yeah.
see.
We would be more often concerned with fearing the reprimand of people, right? Like, was it here? No, it was earlier today. We were having a conversation about praying in public places, and Mohi was part of that. You were there too, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. That, like, for example, when I was coming back from Champaign last Sunday, I had to pray Zohar, and I'm leaving Champaign, so essentially I'd have to pray on the highway, right? And then on top of that, there's a rainstorm coming, right? And I'm thinking, should I just pray underneath a bridge, and then I'm certain people are going to see, and this and that. And I was like, the heck with it, I'm just going to pray wherever. Then a rest stop appears, and then I come to the rest stop, and then I pray. Or I'm going to pray, the thing I was mentioning earlier today. Sure. And so at a rest stop, you got all these truckers, and this is still the South as far as I'm concerned. Everything south of I-80, as far as I'm concerned, is Dukes of Hazzard country, right? You know.
People at the Mason-Dixon line.
Yeah, exactly, right. And so, I'm afraid I'm going to get shot. And then, so part of it is like, hey, no, I have to pray. But part of it is like, well, if I get shot, then I'm shaheed.
That's awesome.
So it's win-win. So,
Well, we did that once.
The Omer Mozaffar.
We
Got
stopped
shot?
at a rest. No.
Okay.
We stopped at a rest stop and we had this giant picnic thing and we all stood on it and prayed together.
Talking about for camp.
No, when we were on the road, remember we stopped at the rest stop. There's grassy area. We prayed under a tree and it wasn't that bad. I wasn't that scared.
I would be scared if I was praying alone though.
yeah, I mean,
Well, my mom is
I was-
terrified of
Fine,
truckers. She's
fine.
scared of truckers. They're throwing her to the rest stop. She's like, be careful for the sketchy trucks throwing her to the rest stop. They're not that bad.
She's like, no, we're pen pals.
She said that about the bikers
yes,
too.
ma'am.
So you know what I started doing routinely, which I don't know if it's okay, but what if you don't have a place to pray,
And then,
can you just pray in your car?
that's a good question. If you want the textbook fifth answer,
No.
then you don't want the textbook fifth answer.
It's you can say wajib and stuff, right? And sunnah while sitting.
What about all those
While on your camel. That's what I heard. On your
You
camel.
can answer that, but it's probably better not to ask, and just continue what you're doing.
What if it's snowy outside and you're out there, where do you pray?
So I had I think I shared it here. I had this,
It's Egyptian same too, if you're flying,
yeah, I mean,
What do you
flying's
guys are
different.
flying
Well, I
in
mean,
different situations?
I'm still suggesting, if you're on a plane, it's time Just get in the aisle.
Oh man.
Make adhan as loud as you can and say, Allah.
Especially if the plane's facing the opposite direction, just face the people next to you. Their feet away. See what happens.
Knock on the pilot's door.
Yeah.
Hey,
Hey.
for 5 minutes, can you just
Can
turn
you
the plane
face
that
this
way?
way? Yeah. I'm Muslim, yeah, and I need to fulfill my lesser jihad than everything. So like,
Some people have told me though that you should stand up in a plane.
you should.
Yeah.
If you
Is that
can,
no?
I guess,
No.
right?
I mean, there you really gotta consider what's going on,
You're getting
right?
out of attention.
Like they're
with
like,
the
no, you
people.
should just pray in like you have an aisle for your family, like just pray in that aisle. Like you know the
Oh,
chairs.
over there?
The
The
chairs,
area?
yeah. That's what I've heard.
She can't.
I don't know.
She can't read.
I don't know. I've heard that if you can pray standing up,
Maybe
I'm
you can pray.
No, he's playing back to some
Yeah.
kids.
Well,
I can barely like
No, I've done
this way.
that.
I can
I've done
sit.
that though.
I barely fit sitting.
No, but I've done that because someone told me that right before I went to Umrah, so then I took it seriously. So like when we were going for Umrah, like the plane was really empty. So that's what we did. Like,
Well, so okay,
It's
so
not
those
bad.
international flights, you've
Yeah,
got
that's
areas
what I'm
that are
talking
bigger,
about.
and we've
Yeah.
actually gotten up
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
stood in areas and
Like
faced
those
it.
food areas.
And as
Exactly.
Flight
we were
attendants are
flying-
probably used to Muslims doing that, though.
Yeah, yeah,
They're
yeah.
probably,
That's
all right,
totally
Going to
okay.
Umrah, yeah.
Yeah, so that's the
Wonderful.
question. Like you
Certain
know, if
airlines
you should
have
do it or
actually
you
made an
shouldn't.
announcement about do not
Timing.
congregate because basically
Really?
because of that.
No, that's a rule.
You're stopping
You're not
bathrooms and
supposed
stuff.
to, yeah,
You
do
can't.
not congregate in this area, and I think a lot of it has to do with exactly that.
Except the Saudi
Prevent people
Arabia.
from.
Yeah.
Because
Were you-
Saudi
I can-
Airlines upstairs, I think the part of the 747 upstairs, they actually turned into a masjid.
I can barely even like doing like those restrooms.
My life flashes before my eyes when I go that small,
I
like,
know.
I can barely turn my
It's the
face. It's so
worst.
scary.
So-
Did you share that hummus article about like pilot lands plane because Muslim doesn't smile wide enough or whatever? Was it you?
I don't remember what name.
Like it's like an onion, like spin off, and it was just yeah, that's it.
That's funny.
So.
So,
Oh, this is sorry.
Get to this one.
150.
Yeah. No. So I was saying. Well, might as well finish this point. So, one time I was at the airport waiting for my flight, and it was all these people were smiling at me. What's going on? So many people are smiling. Then I realized, oh, I was reading the Bible at the time. So I thought from that point forward, I'm going to take my Quran, put it inside a Bible cover, and just.
That's awesome.
So funny.
But yeah, back to this. Like,
That doesn't work for hijabis, man.
sorry.
That doesn't really work for hijabis.
Try it. Just try
Try
it.
it. Have it.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll think I'm like a weird nun or something. So India.
Or take like. Yeah. So another thing to think about implicitly, and we've mentioned this before, is that if Allah Ta'ala obliges me to do something, okay, that my goal is to have enough trust that He will make it possible. Right? So, I gave this example way back at the beginning of the winter. So when the snow first fell, which was, I don't know, October, November, whatever it was, Maghrib time was coming. So Maghrib time at that time was like 4:30, 5 o'clock or something. And I had an appointment, and I was wondering, and I'm like thinking to myself out loud, or thinking, out loud, like, or whatever. Okay, Allah, where am I going to pray? And I could have just normally just pulled up to one of those highway oases, and just go pray in some secluded corner on the outside, but now it's snowing. And I mentioned the story that I was also fasting for whatever reason. And so I had to break my fast, and I thought, well, maybe what I'll just do is I'll break my fast now, and then at my next appointment, I'll go pray. Okay? So I'm walking to the oasis, and I hear behind me, Assalamu alaikum. Right? Yeah. And so there's this other guy from IFS, and he says, are you going to pray Maghrib? I was like, no, I'm just going to break my fast. He's like, let's pray. I'm like, oh, okay, where are we going to pray? He's like, well, find a place. I'm like, all right, fine. So we just found a place, back. And I thought, well, we're already here, so I'm just going to enjoy it and pray nice and slowly. And, prayed everything. And so I was able to make my prayer. And then, right after that, the appointment that I was supposed to have, where I was going to pray Maghrib, got canceled. Right? So everything worked out. What is the point that I'm making here? The point that I'm making here is that you want to get to the level where you have enough trust in Allah that if He's obliging you to do something, it can be done in normal cases, right? Which means that if it's time, that if you have to make a prayer, there is a spot for you somewhere to pray. You just have to go and look for it, right? There might be some issue of embarrassment or anything, or you're hiding or shyness and all those things, but you will have your place to pray. And I have trouble thinking about any time ever, and maybe you guys have had the same or different experience, where I prayed in some public or semi-public place where I ever got interrupted. Okay. There was one time where when someone said something and then they went away, and I don't know what they said. Right? Something to think about. Sorry.
It was so funny. Our friend was praying once in Chicago with her family, and people came, and they were like, "Go back to Israel." I was like, "What?"
You're like, that's what we're trying to do.
How can you be so ignorant? That's so funny.
No, but one time we were praying, like, I don't know, I guess we were praying, there's an empty space in the museum.
I don't know what's going on. Children locked in the, what? What is that?
There's an empty space in the museum, and we figured, like, oh, no one's praying in this empty room, I wonder why it's here. So we just started praying there. This, like, museum lady came, and she's like, hey, what are you guys doing here? This, like, off-limits, like, place, area, and we're like, we're still praying, and we're like, oh, God. And then we're like, okay, so we just finished our prayer, and then she, like, just, like, staring at us, and we, like, just ran away. We're like, oh, okay, sorry, bye.
Well, I mean, it was interesting. My sister-in-law, where were we coming from? Anjum and I were driving back from somewhere, and it was dark, and we had to stop so we could pray. And we were stopped at some random gas station, and I had to go in to do wudu. And so she was like, well, I'll wait for you before we do come out. I'm like, yeah, I figure we can kind of go around in the back here, and I'll